Okay, so this is a demonstration in three-point perspective where we're going to build a city. So the first thing you need is a horizon line. It's the red line that's on the screen here that is basically horizontal, and that also represents where the sky meets the earth. So this drawing we're going to be looking at we're going to be at ground level looking up at buildings that are super tall, and it's really forced perspective. So we need three vanishing points. There's one on the left, one on the right on the horizon line, and then there's one that is up in the sky. Okay, so from there, what we're going to do is then we're going to create our first front edge of a building. So with perspective, with this perspective, we're going to start with a line that basically comes down just a little bit below the horizon line, and that lower half of the blue vertical line here is going to represent the front corner or the front point of a building, like on a street corner. So then the next thing we do is we draw from that point to both the right and the left vanishing points. So so basically you've got these three lines converging at an edge that is, or a corner that's just below the horizon line. The next thing you want to do is then establish a height. So really, it doesn't matter how high up, but these two green lines on the right and left, you just need to pick a point on this vertical blue line that represents the height of a building, and then draw from that point to the right and the left vanishing point. And it can be however high you'd like it to be, as long as it's above the horizon line. So then what we're going to do is we're going to establish how wide the building is by drawing construction lines that go from the top vanishing point down to the bottom blue line on the right and the left side, these horizontal lines that go below the horizon line. And so what you might want to do is just decide how wide do you want the building to be at street level, from the front corner to, say, the right side. How wide do you want it to be, and then pick a point on that blue line, then draw up to the top vanishing point. And it's really up to you. Your drawing may not look exactly like mine, depending on how wide you make the base. So you do the same thing on the right side to the top vanishing point as you would on the left side to the top vanishing point. So what you have is you essentially have the beginnings of the first building, and so I'm going to outline this in black and you'll see what I'm talking about. And so that's the first building. Now you want to do the same thing. So for the next one, you want to do the same thing for the next one. So what I've done is I've basically popped in two of these green slanted lines that represent the width of the next building, and there's basically a space between the two buildings. So what I'm doing is just deciding a couple of points on the left bottom blue line. So this left blue line on the bottom that goes to the left vanishing point. I've decided how wide that I want to make another building, and I've drawn them up to the top vanishing point, and that's going to establish the facing side of this next building. And so once you have those drawn, you can kind of see there's a suggested top because of the first building, that first green line with that first building. So I'm just going to decide that it's going to be lower. So I've picked another green line that's going to represent the height of a building that's not as tall as my first building. So I've picked a point on that first edge of the second building. And then from there I went to the vanishing point on the right side, and then I'm going to do the same thing from that same point on the left side. So you want to take a minute and really see that you've kind of followed what I've got, because by the time I finish this, there'll be a lot of lines on here. Essentially what you're really trying to say is that you can have your building be any height, and if you don't have a line that goes to a vanishing point, then something's wrong with the image and you want to back this up. So on the second building, I've got this green line that's nearest us, and I've decided how high the building's going to be, and from that point I've drawn to the right and left vanishing point. And so now I'm going to draw the bottom line here. So if you look at the bottom of this second building I'm constructing, I took a line that goes right here at the bottom behind. That represents the bottom of a building where there's sort of like an alley between the two. And then I'm going to draw in the back of the building for how wide. So you almost want to imagine that your first building isn't there, and that you could see the second side of this second building, so the right and the left side of the second building. So what does that look like? If I outline it there, that's the second building, and they appear to be transparent, like they're made of glass. This is so you can see the structure. Now the next thing we're going to do is on the right side, we're going to make another building. So I've drawn a vertical line that goes from the baseline, the blue baseline on the right, all the way up to the top vanishing point. And then this building is going to be attached to the first one. It's going to be side by side because not every building has the same has an alley between it. So I'm going to decide that it's going to be a different height too, so it's going to be kind of a short one. So I've decided along the edge of the first building that I drew, along this right edge of the first building that I drew, I decided a height, and then I drew from that line to the right vanishing point. And then what I've got is basically just a rectangle. I don't see 3 dimensions. It's basically like a trapezoidal slanted rectangle that's attached to the first box. So I'm going to keep doing this. It's the same process. You draw a line, you figure out how wide you want the building to be. So I'm still on the left side. And then I draw another line that represents the width. So since I've got 2 more lines, I can essentially say that there's a second building that's separated from, or it's a third building on the right side, but it's separated from the second building with an alley. So I'm going to establish the height with another line going to the left vanishing point, and then I'm going to establish the height on the right side. And so then I've got the bottom baseline. So I don't know if you saw that, but look at the bottom baseline that I added. And if you didn't see it get added, the bottom baseline comes from the blue line on the bottom blue line on the right side and goes from the corner of that building to the left vanishing point. And then I'm going to decide how wide it is. So I'm going to pretend that you could see the back of this building, the thickness of this building above. So I'm going to outline it now and show you kind of what that building would look like. So you want to pause for a moment probably if you have gotten lost and kind of study the drawing a little bit and see if you're doing the same kind of thing. So now I'm going to establish some street level stuff. So I'm going to draw these blue lines I had a little bit longer. I'm going to extend them out. So you just line your ruler up with the vanishing point and that blue line that you had drawn the first time and extend it all the way out off your paper, going all the way off to the left side and all the way off to the right side. And then you want to decide how wide the sidewalk is. So if you take a minute and then draw another line, and what you end up with is this diamond-shaped box that's right in front of your first building, and that's going to be the sidewalk essentially. So that's the surface of the sidewalk, but then you want to do the same thing again with some really close lines. So I've added a second line, and that represents the thickness of the sidewalk. And then I'll put in the front corner of the sidewalk. I'm not going to round the sidewalk at this point. I'm just going to kind of show you the sharp corner of it. And then here we go. We've got another couple of lines. We're going to draw in the rest of these lines. So on the right side, what I've done is I've basically drawn a series of lines from the left vanishing point all the way out to the outer edge of the sidewalk on the right side, and I've gradually made them get closer and closer together, because as things go farther away, they get smaller, and things that are a certain distance apart look like they get closer and closer together. So just make sure that you're kind of getting the space between one box and another getting smaller, and that they all go to the left vanishing point, and then you do the same thing on the other side. So on the other side, I've added in here now the lines on the sidewalk, and then let me outline the sidewalk, and you can kind of see what I've added. So that's the black outline. And remember, everything goes to a vanishing point in three-point perspective. You don't have any lines that don't go to a vanishing point. So now I'm going to add, on the right side, I'm going to add another sidewalk across the street, and another sidewalk line across the street on the left side. And then I'm going to extend the same lines. That's the very same lines that were coming from the left side. I'm going to extend them out so I can project those lines across, because the lines on one side of the street can help you to space out the lines on the opposite side. So those go to the left vanishing point, and the lines that help you space go to the right vanishing point. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, and I've outlined them now. So really, these blue lines that are in the middle of the street now are just guidelines for showing you how one sidewalk section lines up across the street with another one. And that's a little formulaic. I mean, it doesn't look like most streets in terms of reality, but it does help you to create some sense of believability. So I'm shading in the front edge of these two lower curbs So and then the curved corner that you see in front of the first building we drew. And then I'm adding in more lines. So I want you to take a look at this grouping of lines I've drawn, because with these lines I establish more buildings. It's the same process, and I know that it looks nutty when I put it up here and I show you that I've drawn in all these extra lines. But essentially, you're doing the same process over and over again to establish one building, another building, and another building. You just got to you got to use the same vanishing points. Don't make up any vanishing points, and continue. So here's what it looks like if I were to shade it in and have a light source coming from the right side, kind of shining on the right side of the buildings. And then after that, you guys can maybe color the sky and the street. And you could even go farther and add some cast shadows from the buildings on the left side. And I've popped in a silhouette of some distant city buildings, And this is a little forced, a little bit acute in terms of how pointed these buildings look. And if you want to make it probably a little more believable, you just need to raise this vanishing point, the third vanishing point that's up in the sky. Pretend that it's off your paper someplace, and that'll make the buildings look a lot more believable. But for the sake of the demo, I have to squish them in and kind of keep them on the paper so you can see where I'm drawing to. Anyway, that's essentially the demonstration, and good luck, rewind it, and see how it goes.